everyone, welcome back to the LaceUp with Mickey podcast. This is episode 4 already. In this episode, we're interviewing one of my mentors, one of my heroes, one of my first customers when I got started with LaceUp in Las Vegas. We have Gus from Tortillas Incorporated. Gus, how are we doing today?
Very well, Mickey, very well. Thank you for the opportunity to participate. I've seen a couple of your podcasts thus far, and it's exciting. I've seen what you're doing.
It's really awesome to have you on. I mean, when I started this concept, honestly, you were the first or second name that came to mind because I thought back to all the conversations that we had about business and about all the books that you read and all the references that you gave me to take a look at, how much you helped me, not just when we were implementing my software and we had problems, but from a friend and from a mentor standpoint. So I thank you, and anyways, that was the reason why I want you on the podcast.
Well, that's very kind of you to say, Mickey, and obviously you know that I respect you and what you do is a very bright, intelligent young man that is going to go far, very far, my friend.
Well, thank you, Gus. So the first question I have for you is, I mean, people, so that they get a little bit of context, why don't we tell them who you are? What is it that you do?
Well, like you said, my name is Gustavo Gutierrez, located here in Las Vegas, Nevada. What we do is we manufacture tortillas right here locally, and that's basically how we got started, just making tortillas back in 1979. So it was way before your time, Mickey, I'm sure. So 1979 is when we first opened the door. We had Dad actually invested in a small tortilla machine that's manufacturing less than 200 dozens per hour. That was all we can do, 200 dozens, and that in those days was really even hard to keep up with 200 dozens, trying to catch them by hand and package them. But we started off in a small little 400 square foot building. One of our biggest accounts now, or actually then, made references like, I remember that company when they were working in dirt. Pretty much it was a garage. The dirt was outside, obviously, but it was a garage type building that was manufacturing tortillas. And the reality is, we really didn't. We started with my dad started with a little vision, saying we got to try to do something, and with no market, with nothing, we started manufacturing the tortillas. Now that we had the tortillas, we needed to do something with those tortillas. So we had a little store, which really was not creating much business, being known. Nobody knew about it. No publicity, no advertising. Mm-hmm. Reality, we were throwing a lot of product away. It was going to waste because we couldn't sell it. So it was estaba expirando, it was expiring. The next stage then is my mom actually had the idea, well, let's go to this neighborhood, and that time it was called Naked City, behind which now is the Stratosphere, but there was a lot of Latinos, a lot of Hispanics in that area. So we actually took our tortillas in the back of my, I had bought a brand new car, a Mustang. Anyway, it was a beautiful car. Of course, then I started using it to deliver tortillas. Go figure. We went to that neighborhood and started knocking on doors, and that's in fact how we started getting our customer base, knocking on doors, getting people familiar with the product.
So you had the store, and while you were having the store, you realized that there was too many tortillas that you were wasting. So you decided that you wanted to go door to door, right? And not the best area of Las Vegas, must I add, and knock on the doors and try to sell your tortillas.
Yeah, back then, obviously, it was a different time. I mean, different time, there's still the craziness of what the world is seeing today. It wasn't there, so we still had that, like you say, it wasn't the best of neighborhoods, but it's not as bad as some of them are today. But in any case, and one of the reasons that we actually ended up in Naked City is because there was a little market that I wanted to sell my product to, and it's called Little Giant Market. Mm-hmm. And I went in to make the sales pitch, and the guy says, "Oh, no, I don't need any tortillas. I got tortillas, plenty of tortillas already." And so that's when we decided to go knocking door to door and get people familiar with our product. And he got so many requests from that neighborhood that finally I didn't have to go door to door anymore. I was able to deliver to the one market in the morning, and he'd run out by the afternoon. He'd call me up, and I had to take more. So that in fact was my very first account. It's funny thinking back to that, but that's how we landed. And then Mom, at times we'd go out to different ranches, because había ranchos por acá in Pahrump and west, going out towards like Salt Lake and getting people, not Salt Lake, St. George. A lot of Hispanics out there, and we started selling products out there and getting people to know our product. Anyway, that's how our humble beginnings. At that time, my dad and we both worked, separate jobs. I worked at the Dunes. I worked at the Flamingo. Dad worked at the Dunes, and we pretty much had to keep working because obviously the business wasn't giving us reality was any income. We were supporting the business. We did that Dad did that for about 15 years. I did it for about 10 years that I was able to finally, that the business, after 10 years of sweat equity, we started off with three employees, I think. No, two. It was 4 family members and 1 employee. And 10 years of just day in, day out, working 2 jobs. Finally, I was able to get away from one of them and then devote full-time to the company.
How did you distribute your time during those 10 years? Like, obviously, you probably had a full-time job, right? It was an 8-hour-a-day job?
That's correct.
And then how much time do you allocate to selling tortillas?
So I had a full-time job, so it was 8 to 10 hours a day at work at the tortilla factory, go home, rest, and then go to work. So it was that 8 to 10 hours a day. I get to tortillas about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and get home, get some rest, and then go to work. So it was they were long days. I didn't really get to see my kids too much at that time. I actually had one Michael at that time. I could see. Actually, I have pictures of him in a little cage at the factory. While we were watching him there, we had a little section where the kid Michael can play and stuff while we were working. Yeah, so you're talking about the sales aspect. In the morning, we'd get there. I'd grind the corn, start making the tortillas. Once the tortillas were made, I'd get on the phone. And actually, that's the way. Besides that little giant market, we started making phone calls. I got the phone book and started calling out different restaurants and businesses that might be using tortillas, and that's how I started making my cold contacts and started gaining customers. Slowly but surely, I started getting a little route going, and they started asking for different products apart from tortillas. And we make corn tortillas, and a lot of the businesses that I was talking to wanted the flour tortillas as well. So we started building up a clientele, which I found that I needed flour tortillas. So in those days, not enough volume yet and know-how really as far as the distribution aspect or shipping. So I made contact to a tortilla factory, actually in Los Angeles, Señor Trujillo, which at that point was the owner of the original Guerrero tortillas. That was before Mission took it or bought it. But made contact with them, and then we started making, we did business together. And he started selling me. I'd go down to California once a week, pick up tortillas, flour tortillas, and come back to accompany my corn tortillas that I started selling. And while I was down there, I started to the Mercado, to South Central LA, and started picking up a bunch of produce as well, bringing back. So I started diversifying, just not tortillas, but starting selling a variety of different products to these restaurants that I was picking up slow but sure. And you asked me something. I mean, I'm talking about the beginning. Today, you know, now we're the number one leading supplier of Mexican products and distributor here in Las Vegas. I've got, I think you probably know this better than I do because you helped set up the system. But I think we have some 350 SKUs or more of products that we're selling to these restaurants, hotels, casinos, and C-stores. That just a broadline distributor now of known. I think we're pretty much known as the Mexican food specialty suppliers here in Las Vegas. Although we are have customers as far as California, Utah, Arizona, Colorado now. So it's exciting.
And I want to ask you a couple questions. So in the beginning, you're cold calling customers, right? Then you start expanding your product base by dealing with the suppliers in California, where you would go once a week, pick up the product, and bring it back. At which point, along the way, you would sell it to some customers in California and others here in Las Vegas. Now, how long were you running that business model before you were big enough, right, to have employees do that job for you? How many years did that take?
Oh my goodness. About 10 years, to be honest with you.
So 10 additional years?
10 additional years from that point, yeah. So by the time, it took me 10 years to get to enough money where I can actually support myself and then take over and run. So another 10 additional years before I can actually get help. You know, I always thought to myself and told my dad, I said, shit, is there ever going to be anybody else that can do this? We're going to have to do this for the rest of our lives. And lo and behold, I mean, obviously it was one of the things that kept us going. It's not like I enjoyed doing it. It was part of what we did, and took pride in what we do and what we did. But yeah, it took a while to get somebody to come in and start, handing the reins over to other people. Today, I've got like 130 employees, but back then it was just a handful.
I think people underestimate, including myself sometimes, how long it takes to do things. Recently, last episode, I interviewed Ignacio. He's one of the co-founders of this business. But Ignacio, my uncle, had LaceUp for about 15 years before I ever came on board. So it takes, for those of you listening, it takes 10 to 20 years of sacrifice while you're working likely 2 jobs, right? Working 12 to 16 hours a day to be able to get one of these businesses to the point of subsistence, let alone profit, right? So that you can finally go at it full time and really pump in all your resources to get it to grow at an exponential rate. So Gus was able to take this business after 10 years, he was at 3 employees, 10 years more traveling back and forth to California, and probably what would you say, another 10 years after that to get to 130 employees, something like that.
We're at 40-year mark. So
40.
We're currently at the 40-year mark. So at the 30-year mark, I believe we had probably about 60 to 70 employees, maybe 60 employees at the 30-year mark. And I think at that mark, actually what we did back then, we got to the point where we were operating out of a little, we took over some warehouses, and I had a market, and I had the tortilla factory, I had a warehouse and another warehouse between everything there at that particular location. I call it Stalker Street location. That in fact was our 3rd major location. I should go back a little bit. Something happened in year 5, I believe it was, of our business, and something that nobody expected, but we were in the process of opening our 3rd location, and the reason I was opening the 3rd location is because I needed to go a little more institutional. What I found is I was doing great business on the retail sector. In other words, people were coming in to my location and buying tortillas and the masa. At times, I had lines of people waiting for the masa. And let me tell you, we were doing good. I mean, things were humming along. but the type of equipment that I had was specific to that particular crowd, for the mom and pop at home, table tortilla, traditional. The restaurants needed something a little more institutional.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the thinner tips, the product that will stand, won't get greasy, won't fall apart when you lift up a taco, you know, stuff that you can't really do, that needs more endurance than what you have at home. So I needed different equipment. So, and then, long story short, is we were opening up our new plant, and I get this phone call. I got home at, I think it was 7 at night, and it happened to be because I had to go to work at midnight, but I got home at that night and was in the shower, and my wife knocks on the door, says, "You got a phone call." And it was the fire department letting me know that my retail location was on fire.
Wow.
So I thought it was like, oh, come on, somebody's pulling something. It's like, oh, this is fire chief, you know, whoever it was. And it's like, oh, my God. So we jumped in the car and head back, and sure enough, our little gold mine burnt down. Like, oh, my goodness.
So you're pulling up. How did you? I mean, so you pull up. This is something you've invested all these years in, right? And you pull up and you see it burnt to a crisp. I mean, what was going through your mind at that point?
It was devastation. The reality is we lost, and we were obviously I had just made a deal talking about Señor Trujillo. This is an interesting thing. I don't know. Anyway, I think it's interesting. One of the things that I had made a deal with Mr. Trujillo about this other equipment that I was telling you. I needed institutional equipment to make different tortillas. And Mr. Trujillo and I came to, did some negotiations. We made a deal. And I bought this equipment. It was used, but it was about $250,000 worth of equipment, okay? Mm-hmm. That I did not have that money, but he's like, all right, well, I'm going to give you these terms, these payments, and we'll go from there. Well, because of what I had at the retail store, we were making good, and we can sustain that. But when this fire happened, it just, everything devastated. Obviously, here's a lesson. We were underinsured. Mm-hmm. We got, from that whole fire, I think I got $20,000 back. All the equipment that was in there, all the product, everything, $20,000 was nothing.
And Mr. Trujillo's equipment was in there as well?
No, it was at the new place.
Oh, thank God.
But $250,000 of equipment that we had over here, I had no income. I had no income. So I went back actually to Mr. Trujillo and let him know. I said, this is what happened. I've got really no way to pay you back right now. I'm going to have to return your equipment, and I'm not going to be able to do. Well, he actually told me, he says, you know what, Gustavo, you're going to make it. I think you're going to be fine. You take that equipment, you make it work, you do what you got to do, and pay me back when you can and how you can. And that, to me, right there was an angel that came down, and just without him, I have no idea where we'd be. The reality is. And like that, Mickey, I got to tell you, throughout my life, I've had a lot of those instances. I think I've told you that before. But situations that happen that, well, as you know, I'm a firm believer, is we start moving towards things and putting our minds to do stuff miraculously, somehow, some way, things just open up for us, and things start to come together. Yeah, so that was the beginning of our new plant, with no income coming in, and I had to go out and start getting more restaurant accounts, because the majority of my business was retail, like I said, and I had good retail business at that time. And actually, a lot of there's some really good businesses out in Las Vegas now that took that model and ran with it. Mariana's is one of them. They were one that came in just right after the. Actually, I'm not sure if they were even. They might have been same concept, open down the street during that particular time frame, and they've done very well over here with that particular concept of the retail market, tortilla factory type. And La Bonita has done as well, done very well. I decided to go a different route. Instead of doing the retail, I decided to go more institutional and food service sector, which, you know, for better or worse, it was a decision that I made, and I think we're doing quite well at what we're doing.
And the crazy thing going back to the fire and you not being able to pay for the equipment, and having Senor Trujillo step in and help you, right? And kind of you were able to utilize that as a launching pad to really get the business to where it is today. I mean, I think without the help of other people in your journey, it's almost impossible to make it. Like when I was in that first year of LaceUp, before we got to you, I was cold calling customers, and I was continuously failing. And it was around summer of that year, I scheduled a meeting with the dad of one of my friends who owns a big engineering firm in Las Vegas. And I sit down with him and I go, you know what, things aren't going that good, because I keep trying, I keep hitting my head against the wall, but I'm not getting anywhere. And I don't think I'm going to make it because my uncle and his partner Ignacio, they've got full-time jobs and they don't take this thing 100% seriously. But little did I know, or I didn't take into account that obviously they had families back at home that they were trying to take care of, and that the revenue from the company at the time couldn't sustain everybody. But anyways, long story short, he turns to me and goes, Mickey, you've got two options. Option number one is you can put your nose down to the dirt, and you're going to have to work for 5 to 10 years to get this thing anywhere. That's option number one. Or option number two, you can quit right now and come in, shave, get a clean cut haircut, get a suit on, come visit me tomorrow and I'll get you a sales job with one of my friends. So anyways, I go home after that and I start thinking about it. And I'm like, well, somebody who has made millions and millions and millions of dollars that's super successful, right, is telling me the only formula is to just put my nose down and work. Right, and thinking back at that advice, had he never given me that advice, had I never had him as a resource, right, had he never been available for me to call him and have that meeting, more than likely I would have quit. And I would have taken a sales job, or I would have pursued another different career path, and I wouldn't be where I'm at today. So in my case, that was one of my angels that came down and touched me. So for sure, I think there's no way that we get to where we're at, right, having a successful business, without the help of people that take a chance on us, because I think they see a piece of themselves inside of us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah. Yeah, but anyways, so you were given this opportunity, you took advantage of it, you become one of the biggest distributors in Las Vegas. I would say, I mean, in my opinion, I've got mostly all the customers in Vegas, all the distributors, and you're in the top two largest, and that has the most different variety of products. Not just that, but the level of service that you give. So that segues well into the service, because obviously you sold, you cold called, you built a business, but what we haven't touched upon is the level of service that you had to give to sustain, right, business over this many years. So can you touch upon the service that you give and how you're able to maintain your customers?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is we, and that we've instilled. A couple of things I think fall into that. One, the reality is, I'm going to say we work hard, because I don't do it alone. I've got a team of people that we work really hard to instill a good, sincere working environment for our team, to make them feel that they're part of something. It's a cause. It's something that we all work towards. They're pretty much they know where we've come from, and we hit upon our mission statement and our vision constantly in our meetings, and we go back and forth. One of the things that at first was really difficult for me was to get people to participate in our meetings. So, oh no, not another meeting. And the thing is, we start talking about it and going through and defining our mission and defining our vision and what we're all about, and the culture that we have within the company. And I think that in itself was important, because they didn't want to come. Everybody's too busy to be in meetings, which of course we are, but at the same time it's important. So one of the things I found, which was really cool, is now people are like, hey, when are we going to have a meeting? And that's exciting. That's exciting to me to hear that little buzz going on. And I don't know why, it's human nature. We tend to forget what the hell we're doing. So it's important for us to always get together. So I think the first part is the culture aspect. And as a team, we all believe that, you know, we're only as good as our weakest link. And I say that because our business is a little different, because why do I say that? We manufacture. We're manufacturers. And I know a lot of tortilleros, a lot of different. I was part of the Tortilla Industry Association for quite some time. I actually was president of the organization and learned and have dealt and associated with a lot of different tortilla factories. And we are much different than a lot of them, because what they do is they make tortillas, and they do very well. Very well. That's all they do. We, on the other end, we make tortillas, and we're a broadline distributor. So we have not just the tortillas, but we have the distributors. I got the warehouse. I've got the customer service, and we're doing, you know, a lot of our stuff is DSD, and so, you know, the customers are so important to us in our customer base. You know, always on my tagline is like, customers are not an inconvenience when they call. You know, they're our customers. This is the reason we're in business. So we just got to continue to take care of them. One of our biggest assets, I got to say, is about 8 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. I don't remember now. I hired a young man by the name of Alex Nin that came from U.S. Foods. He's our Spaniard here that has really helped the company and the vision and just increased our sales and instilled, you know, just he's got a great work ethic and has come in and glued and been a good part of our success as well. But I think, like, just going back to what makes us different is that we are not the cheapest. We're not the biggest, but we do take care of it. And when you're going to order something, we say you're going to get it. You're going to get it. You need something, you call us. You're going to get service. So I think we take pride in that. You know, I think a lot of companies anymore, especially dealing with so many here, it doesn't exist anymore. They use it as a slogan. It just doesn't exist, and that's because I'm telling you from my experience, even calling different companies and dealing with, like, my God, how do they stay in business? I don't understand.
Well, I think a lot of these companies, they stay in business just due to inertia, right? They've been in business for so long that their customers don't necessarily know where to look for an alternative. But it's getting to the point now in this day and age, that competitors are all becoming more available online, right? So the worse service you give, the more probability, or the higher the probability that the customer is going to go shop around, and they're going to find something on Google. They're going to call that customer or that vendor, and that vendor is going to paint them the sky, tell them that they're the best for cheaper. And the customer, not knowing any better, they'll just leave. And that's what's happened to us on some occasions. Anytime we've ever given bad service, right, it could have been remedied. It could have been remedied by taking a different action or by calling the customer and taking care of their issue faster. But they looked for something else. And in some occasions, they found something else and they left us. At that time, at that point, it was a learning opportunity for us. But what I'm trying to get at is, if you don't maintain the service, then the customers, now more than ever, right, have all the possibility in the world to leave you. And so when I go into a sale, like you, we pitch, we're not the cheapest, right? Just like you, we're not the biggest. But I can promise you, if you call me at 3 or 4 in the morning with a problem, and I'm half asleep and your company's down, I promise I'm going to answer the phone, get up out of bed, and fix it for you. And that's why I'm allowed to charge the price I can. Go ahead.
I can actually attest to that. We've had, because we're dealing with these hotels and casinos, usually my trucks and distributors, like most distributors, my trucks hit the road at 5 a.m. They're out. So all the matrix and everything that happens here starts at about 11 o'clock at night, and by 10 o'clock, you know, that's about when everything is being delivered. So yeah, we've had occasions that we've had to call you, and sometimes, most of the time, it's because my darn server or something went down. But I've always been grateful that LaceUp is there for us. And you know that it's like you're in the middle of a river without a paddle, and it's always good to know somebody's out there got a lifeline. Help! So.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, if it's not me, it's one of my people, but I'm always there. Like I've got customers to this day that they call me and I answer the phone, because that's just the way it is, and it doesn't matter how much money you make, how big you get, how many employees you have to maintain some kind of connection. And I think when you lose that connection, that's when you lose touch with the people that built your business in the first place and enabled you to have what you have today. So you kind of have to be grateful and humble yourself, because sometimes those phone calls aren't that nice, right? I still get phone calls with customers yelling at me at this point in my career. Do you still get those phone calls or not anymore?
Of course I do. Yeah. Of course I do. And the customer, especially the newer customer, they don't know. They have no clue. They want their product. Yep. They don't care about my problems. They don't care about I have issues. They don't care my machine broke down. They don't want to know my truck's stranded. They want their product, and I get it. I mean, it's part, and that's part of it. It's like I was telling my air conditioning repair person. It's like, shit, every time I call you, it's something broken. It's like, don't worry, that's my job, man. That's what I'm here for. I love that attitude, right? And that's the way it should be. And talking about Alex Nin, one of his slogans is, every time you get a phone call, it's an opportunity. As bad as that phone call could be, you just want an opportunity. So if you look at it that way, as bad as that phone call could be, you're getting yelled at, you're getting this, man. You think about what good can come of this? What can we do? And on many occasions, I've had to resort to and think back to that, and lo and behold, something good comes. Even if it may not be that day, may not be that week or that month, but they'll remember this person was there listening and taking care of my problem. So
and the crazy thing is, my uncle, right? My uncle did. I think his journey and yours are very similar, and there's a lot of parallels. And he says the exact same thing. It's crazy because we'll go out to lunch. I'll get out of the car to grab a coffee after lunch, come back into the car, and he's on the phone with a customer getting yelled at about a problem. And he hangs up and I go, Uncle, why are you taking that phone call at this point, right? Why don't you just give it to support? And he goes, you have no idea how many phone calls of those I've taken that have yielded a reference, another opportunity, an opportunity to provide another product. So as long as I'm around, I'm always going to take those phone calls. And that's something that I, thank goodness I have you guys to teach it to me, because me, I'm like, shoot, just send it to support. And I lose touch with the importance of that communication. So I think there's a lot of parallels between successful individuals like you and him that start companies like this. But I think we'll use that as a good segue. Can you tell the audience what it is, what's next for Tortillas Incorporated? What are you guys up to? What are your goals for the next couple years? Tell us about what the future looks like.
Well, obviously one of our biggest, our future is so bright, we're all wearing sunglasses. How's that? We're excited. We're excited. The company bought a parcel of land, about 5 acres of land in the county. And for the last 2 years, almost 2.5 years, we've been going through the architectural permitting process. Currently, we're working out of 3 different locations. And about 2 years ago, I opened a new division, which we call the kitchen. Mm-hmm. So I opened that new section of the business, and I opened the reality was just to make salsas and chili rellenos, and that thing has just morphed. And what we found is we took advantage. One of the biggest here's the deal: everybody anymore, Mickey, makes tortillas. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a lot of tortilla factories out there. Why are we different? And I'm going to compare it to the big boys now. And Mission Foods are very good at what they do. And what they do is they'll take 3 or 4 products, and that's what they make. Day in, day out, 16 hours a day, 20 hours a day, that product. We, and kind of like what you do as well, we're more specific, and we found our niche. Mm-hmm. So each restaurant that we go to want something different. They don't want the Mission. They don't want this. They want something different. So we were able to, I mean, when you remember when you're putting in our SKUs, it's like, oh, well, chip. Okay, we got another chip. I think we have like 40 different types of chips. I'm like, really? 40 different types of chips? Yeah, everybody wants something different. There's a thick one, a thin one, a bubbly one, not bubbly, greasy, not greasy, colored, different flavor profile. So within that kitchen, we found the same thing. That thing just morphed. So when we started making the salsas, now we found in chili rellenos, we found a niche to the chefs that are looking for stuff that we're able to make for them. Long story short is we started just to make the salsas and stuff, and that stream of income has just morphed. I think we started at zero and taken it to like $300,000 in 2.5 years in sales, just from that little kitchen that I have. So that's exciting because now our next step is we're going to go into the USDA. Currently we're FDA and the USDA. So we're operating, like I said, out of 3 different plants, three different locations. So the goal is to now be under one state-of-the-art building under one roof, and that's going to just help with all of our costs. We're working. I tell my team, I said, man, hacemos milagros. The reality is we do miracles. We're working out of 3 different locations, and to see these trucks load up at 5 o'clock every morning and out is miraculous. I got a great team. They're working out of 3 buildings, bringing everything to one location, loading these trucks and going. So I think our efficiency levels are just going to increase. Our product, we're buying new equipment, we're retooling. So I'm excited about bringing on the next 100 employees. Let's put it that way. So it's fun. It's something that the adrenaline's pumping. Everybody's excited about moving to our new home, and I see that it's still about a year away. Actually, about a year and a half away, but it's coming.
Yeah, and the cool thing about people like you is that you always have one foot firmly planted today and the other foot in the future, and you're thinking about both all the time. And that's another thing that's a parallel with how my uncle is, right? You have to think about the future, because it's like, okay, you reach a certain plateau, you're making a certain income level, right? The company's a certain size, but honestly, I get bored personally, and I'm constantly thinking, what else can I do? What am I doing in the next 3 years to grow this company, to change the way we do business, to increase revenue tenfold? And I think having that sight, right, that foresight to be able to know what you're going to be doing in a few years is crucial to being able to have a business that lasts 40, 50, 60 years like yours. At some point, I mean, you'll have the 100-year tortilla in Las Vegas. And I mean, I think at this point, your business is going to be indestructible. And that's something that's incredible. And that's something that I respect and admire tremendously.
That's one of the biggest. It's funny. A couple of things you just sparked there. First of all, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And well, actually, 100 years, I don't know. The next generation is being groomed, I think, which is a great thing here. Got some family members that are actively playing roles, which I'm excited about. And they're learning, and obviously you want to give them the best opportunity. You don't want to give it to them. What's the saying? Teach a man to fish. Don't give him a fish.
Yeah.
So they're learning from the ground, and they're paying their dues. They're doing what they need to do, which is awesome. And just the same way I learned and did, and I appreciate everything that goes into it. I think that kind of helps when you're there. Don't want to sit, like one of the things that you said, you need to feel the pulse, stay connected, know what's going on, because I could be up in the ivory tower and lose track and touch. But I think the thing is that the compassion that I feel, because I've done it, I know what it is. Nobody can tell me, because I know. In each different segment of the business that I've worked, from delivery to sales to manufacturing, distribution, I've been there all of it, and that's important. And the biggest thing is, to me, don't believe the press. you start believing your own press, you get into trouble. You start believing the press, you get into trouble. And you know, that's so easy to do. So easy to do.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. I mean, anytime we've believed our own hype, or have gotten complacent even, with the amount of, I mean, it's really easy, like, especially when you have nothing and you really start coming into some money, right? And you start getting some of the luxuries that money affords you. It's really easy to fall into complacency. It's really easy to start thinking that you're an incredible entrepreneur because you're able to build this thing. But sometimes it's better to be humble, right? And to find what you're doing next, and to find your next goal and your next mission, so that what you build becomes indestructible for those next generations of family members that are coming along. I mean, I think that's the downfall of a lot of businesses, in that people get complacent, and then when the kids come along, they don't have the experience of having worked every single job, of having gone through all the problems and dealt with all those customer phone calls. And then the first time that something happens to them, right, they get upset, they get depressed, and eventually the business, because it no longer relies on the original founders, goes to shit, right? So for sure, I think the approach that you've employed is going to make for an incredible company, and what I want to tell you is I want to thank you for sharing, right, this wealth of knowledge with us on this podcast. I'm sure the audience is going to appreciate it. Now we're reaching the end of the podcast, but before we go, I wanted to ask you, what's one piece of advice you'd give a young Gustavo, right, starting a business, starting from scratch, working 16 hours a day? What's the one piece of advice that you would give them?
Don't think that it's going to come easy, number one. And it's not, a lot of times people say, oh, business, it's going to be it's a 2 to 5 year goal. And that's a good start. It really is. 2 to 5 years, you should get the momentum started to build. I think that's the first step. But the reality is that you have to have that, the drive, and stick to it. And there's going to be a lot of adversity. And I think be open and receptive more than anything else. One of the main reasons that I'm still here and in business, like that we were talking earlier, is that the relationships and the connections that you make from people that are in your industry, that are going to see something in you that perhaps they saw, or that makes them to relate to them, because that's happened to me, is going to be the turning point for you. They're going to help. So be open, be sincere, be honest. I think the most thing is be honest. Be honest with yourself, and that's one of the things that's helped us. Be fair. You're fair to people, and they're going to see that sincerity. People see that. People see the sincerity. People see the realness in it. So that wasn't one thing. Sorry, Mickey.
Oh, it's okay.
And it's always a thing about, like, and one of the things that you said is keep your vision open. The growth. one of the things, it's something I tell my people all the time, Mickey, and the goal is to get to the peak, but the growth and the excitement is in the journey. So enjoy the journey, as hard as it may be sometimes, as unreal as the stress can get at times. I can tell you about the times I didn't know I was going to make payroll, how I was going to pay my taxes. It's all there, but it's part of it. I mean, we've come to the point now where we can feel pain without pain. I don't know how to explain that, but the growth is in the meadow. The growth is in the stream. It's in the journey. It's on the peak. You go to the top of the mountain, it's just a little dried out peak. There's nothing there. All the growth is green, and the water and everything is in the journey. It's in the walk. It's in what you do. So if you don't take time to enjoy that, buddy, you may not be in the right business. You got to enjoy the good with the bad and know that you're working towards it. It's going to be, and the sun's going to rise tomorrow. So somebody told me once, is if you think that you reach the end, you think that you're there, you think that you can't do this, you think that you're not going to be able to make it. The only thing is just think again. Think again. You'll find it. It's in you. You got to think it. Think it through.
That's an incredible piece of advice. I think once you fall in love with the journey, in addition to obviously having the right formula to find success, more importantly, you find happiness. Because like you said, once you reach the peak, because of the type of people that we are, we're constantly looking for the new peak. And if you can't find that happiness in the journey, then what ends up happening is you have temporary moments of happiness every time you reach a peak. Basically, every time you release some dopamine, right, because you hit a certain goal or milestone, but then the rest of the time you're upset because you haven't reached the next peak. So that piece of advice I think is completely invaluable to the listeners. Now, Gustavo, before we get off the podcast, I wanted to ask you, I'm going to post obviously your link on this video and everything, but where can our users find you? Where are you located? Where can they see your product? Our listeners, where can they find you online?
TortillasInc.com is the website. As far as, like I had mentioned earlier, my main goal now was to go into food service. So majority will find me in restaurants that they go to, especially throughout Vegas, and a lot here in Vegas. We're in Smith's, Whole Foods, Sprouts, retail stores like that. But the reality is, my main business is for food service and end users, so the restaurants and stuff.
Yeah, and the cool thing about it is if you go, for instance, when I'm in Vegas, when I lived in Vegas, I'd go to Frank and Fina's, and nothing would make me more proud of myself than going in and eating one of their chips, because I knew that they were yours.
Thank you for that.
So I appreciate it. I appreciate the interview, and to the audience, that was episode 4 of the Lace Up with Mickey podcast, and that was Gus, owner, CEO, president, all the titles of Tortillas Inc. Thank you guys. Take care. We'll see you next time.